What's good, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Just Be Wise, and today we're gonna give you the survival guide to Premiere Pro. Now, I know if it's your first time hopping in, it can be a little overwhelming, but don't worry. That's the whole reason we got this step-by-step tutorial happening right now, baby. So let's go ahead and open up Premiere and let's get into it. So once Premiere is open, what we're gonna do is come right over here to New Project. Now, in this top left-hand corner, you're gonna see a couple of things that are pretty important. The first being project name. So let's go ahead and name our project. This is gonna be my first edit. Woohoo! Yeah, baby. And then it's gonna be your project location. Now here, if you click, you can choose your location. We're gonna do, for us today, we're gonna choose location, current project, and I will make a new folder that just says my very first. Boom, look at that. We're gonna double click in there, select that folder, and now this is where our project is going to save. What we're gonna do is just come right down here to the bottom right hand corner and click create, and we'll get started from there. All right, so once you've clicked create, you're gonna enter into your very first window inside a Premiere project, and this is called a workspace. And now this workspace is a space where you work, right? In our workspace, you have a bunch of different options of how you're gonna work. So essentially, workspaces give you the opportunity to set up different windows to do whatever job you're trying to do in Premiere. For instance, you look in this top right-hand corner, this is my editing workspace. Now this has been curated by me for the way I like to edit. I want to explain a little bit about how you can actually set up your workspace to best suit you. So the first thing that we want to do is come up here and click on this area where it says workspaces. And then we can come down to edit workspace. Now again, the workspaces I use are separated because I feel like it's easier for me to work in different workspaces based off of what I'm doing. You may feel a little differently. You may feel like I just want all my edit stuff, all my audio, all of my color and graphic stuff in one workspace. For me, it gets a little chaotic. I can't work like that. But if you do like that, I will show you how you can adjust everything. Now, but what we want to do before that is just get the things that you don't need off of your screen. So what you do here, like before, I had effects up here. So you just click, hold, and just drag down. And then guess what? Under do not show, if you click it there, it won't show. Under your menu, these are the things that'll show. So you click OK. So that's the first step. You want to have the workspaces that you want to use. And then under editing, let's say I don't like having my markers in a tab form down here. Let's say I want my markers to show up on the side right here of effects. So I can grab and hold the word markers, and then you'll see I have like this little overlay over these different windows. And now depending on where the overlay is shaded blue will let me know where I can drop my workspace. So if I put it on the side here, it'll put it right in between this window and my effects window. So if I put it right here, now my markers window is here. Now let's decide, oh, you know what? That was a bad idea. Let's go back to where I had it before. You can just do the same thing, click, drag, and if you drop it in the middle, it'll make it as a tab so that you can keep it in that same area. Now let's say you click on this little hamburger, it gives you some different options, and you decide, I just don't even want this thing, I'm gonna close it. And you decide, boop, you close it, it's gone. But you can easily bring back anything or add things to your workspace by coming up here, click on window, and it gives you all your different options. And as you see here, markers are right here. Click on markers and it's back where we found it. The only other thing, you can do undocking them. You can just take it off so it's free to roam wherever you want. And then if you decide you don't want it free roaming anymore, you drop back down in this little gray area here. You'll see it has a little box next to my mouse, and then that allows me to drop it again wherever I want. Okay, so essentially that's everything for workspaces. I'm not going to go into too much detail. You guys can play around with what you want there to set up your workspaces the way you like. All right, so now we need to get some content into our project and able to start editing, right? You can't just start editing without any content. So how are we gonna put content into your project? So let's do that first. Now, what I advise before you even bring any footage or any audio or anything into your project is to be organized. So the first thing that we're gonna do is come down here. You see it has a project and it has my first edit, which is the name of our project. And we can come down here to the bottom right-hand corner, click new bin or folder, and we're gonna type footage. And now if you really want this to be organized, you can do something like 01 footage, and then do another new bin and do 02 audio, right? And all I did here to add this one, I know I didn't click down here, was right click and it brings up these options, and then you can just select new bin. All right, so now we have footage is always gonna be on top because I put it as 01, and then audio is always gonna be second because I put it as 02. So now we wanna import footage. We can double click on footage, and now we have this area is where your footage will live. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can add footage into your project. Now you can literally just have a file folder. Like let's say we do this, I'm gonna bring my folder over. We have this is where my footage is right now that I wanna bring in. I could just click and drag this folder right into this bin and drop it in, and it'll import it that way. But let's say I don't wanna do it that way, I want another way I can do it. So the other way you can do it is, you see here, we have media browser. Your media browser, you can actually search this the same way you would search your file footage. So on this left-hand side here, I can go to local drives, and I'll go to my D drive where I have it, current projects, this project, this media, this footage, and this is the footage I want. I can just right click on this and click import, which I'll do now, and it should import everything into the last bin I had open. So if the bin I last opened was this bin for footage, and I come here, I right click and I click import, it's gonna go ahead. You see it just moved me right back here anyway. Now inside here where it was empty, it has Ninja, and if I drop down, you see all of my footage is right here. All right, so now that we have our footage in, we're ready to start editing. Let's go. Whoa, just hold on just a moment. I know I said we're ready to start editing, but there's one more step we need to do before we actually do an specific edit, like actually edit the footage yet. So now we need to know what our final destination is going to look like. So are we rendering a video for Instagram story? Are we rendering a video for a TV commercial? What are we actually trying to produce at the end of the day? The reason we need to know this first is because we're going to need to set up a sequence, and your sequence is going to give you the restrictions to make sure that your final video matches what you need it to have at the end. That may not make sense, but I'm gonna make it make sense right now. So what we'll do to set up a sequence is go back into my project, my first edit. Let's go ahead and do a separate bin. We'll do 03 sequence, or for short, SEQ, because I don't want to spell it wrong. And then we can just come here to new item, and then right at the top, you see it says sequence. And now it gives you a bunch of different presets to let you know what you want to do. To make things very, very easy, what we're going to do today is just look here. We'll close this RE1 because we're not going to use that. And we'll go to SLR, digital SLR. And we shot a video in 24 frames per second. So we'll do DSLR 1080p video 24. And then it'll give you some details here. And this is great. A description for editing most DSLR format like the Canon EOS, movie, or essentially any cameras. Mostly this is the one you want to use if you're just getting started, or maybe you want to use 30. So it depends on what frame rate you shot in. You can find out more about frame rates and things like that in the Camera 101 video, which I'll link whenever it's done. So anyway, and we'll just go ahead and name our sequence. So this is also important. So we'll name this sequence the same as our project for now. We'll do my first edit, and we'll do V1. This is the first version of this project. Boom. Now, a benefit of naming your sequence is when you're ready to export, you can just name this whatever you want your final video to be named, so you don't have to rename it later. It'll be named based off of the sequence. So that's super helpful. So now that we have our sequence, can we start to edit our video? Yes, finally we can actually put some clips in and start editing. So we have a sequence here. So this sequence is also known as a timeline. So let's go back up to our footage. And now we have all of our video clips here. Let's just double click on one of these video clips. Now I wanted to talk about something else. So I double clicked on one of these video clips and you see it populated on this side of the screen. This is our source. So this is the raw footage. So you can actually see what you shot here, okay? Now, what is important here is there's a couple of different things that you can do in here prior to you actually moving it over to your timeline where you make your main edit here, okay? So one, we can scrub through the video. Maybe there's just a section of the video that we like, that we wanna see, so we don't wanna have to put in the whole clip, right? Maybe this section here where she's talking is a great point, and then I don't wanna cut to him, so before it gets there, I wanna stop it, right? So what I can do to move over just that part of the clip is, while I'm in this window, after I've double clicked here, I can be here and click I on your keyboard, and this will select an end point or a starting point. And then I can play through, and you'll see it'll play through, it'll give you the raw audio and everything. And then let's say I just decide I'm gonna stop it here. I'm probably stopping in the middle of her sentence, but that's okay. We stop here and we hit O for the out or the end of your sequence, or I'm sorry, the end of your clip. So we do that, we have in, we have the out point, and now we can drag this clip over. If you click and hold on the actual video, it'll bring the video and the audio over. Or if you decide, hey, I only actually want the audio for this part of it, you can just click and drag and bring it over and it'll bring the audio. Or you can do the same thing, but just the video only if you do that here. Okay, so this is a great way if you're shooting a lot of B-roll and you just want to go through and like cut together all of the B-roll. You can just go through, select all of your clips that you want to do. You like, let's say I have some B-roll clips here. I can do this one, do it in and a random out point here. I have this one, do it in and a random out point here. And we'll do one more. We'll do this one, do it in and a random out point here. And if we take these three clips, if I bring them over right now, I can drag them from here and bring them over. It's only bringing over the in and out points I selected. So that's a quick way for you to be able to edit without even actually having to edit it in your timeline yet. You can kind of just narrow down what you want to do. And this is going to help consolidate some of your time so that you're not, you know, moving over a full clip into your thing and then chopping it down. You can chop it down way before. So let's say I didn't actually like what I did there. I could just Control Z and I'll get that out of there. So now we're actually going to get down to doing some actual editing. Okay. So we will go back to these clips. We'll use that in and out point and we'll use this in and out point. So those are fine. Now, if you look down here where we have all of our footage, before we move on, you'll see we have the name of our clip, we have the frame rate, and these two are super important. And there's one more thing I want to bring over. So we also have the video info. So let's bring this over too. So we have name, frame rate, and video info. These three things are going to be the most important. One, the name is important so you know what clip you have. The frame rate is important so you know that your frame rate matches your sequence. So if your frame rate of your clip matches your sequence, the reason that's important is because if it doesn't match the frame rate of your video and the frame rate of your sequence, if they're not the same, you can notice there's some jittering or some random things going on that will make your video not seem as smooth or fluid. So you want to make sure that you have those two things matching. Now, here's a way to make sure that you keep them matching. If you shot them in a way to make them not match on purpose, then there's a couple of things you're probably trying to do. One, let's say here, these clips, as you can see, are shot in 59.94 or 60 frames per second. I did that on purpose while filming so that I can bring them into Premiere in post and slow down my footage. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do that. We're not gonna get into a bunch of different details of how to do it. However, I will give you one, just because there's a couple of other things you can learn by just doing this one thing. So we're gonna right click on here, and then we can come to modify. And under modify, we're gonna interpret footage. Now in interpret footage, there's the frame rate. So I can make Premiere assume that this was shot in 23.976. And now the reason you would do that is because it's now going to make the entire clip think that it was shot in 23.97, and it's gonna slow the clip down for you. So it's gonna be slowed perfectly to the frame rate of your sequence. So now what we're gonna do is, all right, I put this clip in. Now what's odd is you see here, the clip from the source, it looks normal framing, looks fine. But when I put it into my timeline, why is it so massive? That doesn't make any sense. It does. This clip, as you see here, was shot in 4K. So my timeline is only HD or 1080. So what I would need to do to this clip is actually shrink it down. So how would I do that? I come up here next to the source. For me, I have my effects controls right here, so I can just flip over. I know I'm gonna do the effects for this clip because it's highlighted in my timeline. And now I'm just gonna scale this down. Now I know it's just 50% is the size difference between 1080 and 4K. So I'm just gonna knock this down to 50. And now this looks like this. Okay, Brandon, I'm tired of you giving me all these details about everything else. I just want to take some clips, put them in the video, and let it ride. Okay, I got you, boss. I'm sorry. I know I was teaching you a lot of stuff that you probably don't want to know, that you need to know, but whatever. All right, so now let's take this video again. We'll take out my sweet lady here, bop. So you guys already know how to do this, and we'll bring it in. Okay, and now another way to do the same thing that we did earlier, where we shrunk it down, you can just come over here and set to frame size. Boom, now look at that. Same thing, less clicks. Okay, now what we're gonna do is go ahead, we're looking at this clip, she's talking, she's laughing, and now we're gonna cut right here to some B-roll, okay? So there's a couple of different ways you can do that. And let's say the B-roll we want is this B-roll we had before. We can do one of two things. If you just want it to be a strong cut to B-roll, we can actually put it on the layer above. So whatever, these are your layers. This bottom layer here is where I have my main video. This top layer is where I'm gonna have my B-roll. And as you see, it's just gonna cut to the B-roll there. Now, let's say you're like, yeah, but that feels a little bit harsh. That doesn't feel nice and smooth. All right, so it doesn't feel nice and smooth. Let's go ahead and add a transition effect to it. So now I have that same red arrow, but I'm gonna right click this time. And it says apply default transition. And that's gonna give me just a nice little cross dissolve. So this time, as she's laughing and whatnot, it just does a nice little fade into the next video. Something that you can do very easily without knowing anything specific about doing transitions. And we can do the same thing at the end, transitions in, transitions out. That looks very pretty. Or what we could do is just click on it and we can do a shortcut, Control D, and it will automatically put on a cross dissolve on the front and on the back. And it's the same exact thing. It just does that default transition. So that's fun. right? So now we actually feel like we're making a movie here. We're making a little something here. And I just realized all of my audio for this is on a separate audio track that I would need to sync. We're not talking about syncing audio right now. That's a whole nother video. However, typically you would have your video and your audio already together, but in a separate video, we'll talk about syncing audio. Not doing that today. Now, with this beautiful moment that we have, she's chuckling and whatnot, and everything's going on, cross dissolving and things like that. This looks pretty. And then it comes back to here. And let's say I want to stop here with what she's talking about. What we're gonna do is hit on our keyboard, the letter C, and that's gonna give us our razor tool. And as you can see, you can put a bunch of your tools here that you commonly use if you don't want to remember your keyboard shortcuts, okay? So I could also, instead of hitting C, if I hit V to go back to my selection tool, I can just click here and then I can cut. So if I want to end this here, I can cut and just end this, boom. But as with everything, there's another way to do it as well. I can just highlight it, Control K will cut wherever my playhead is. So that's a quicker way to cut, and then you just delete it and you're done. Now, I just realized something that we didn't talk about that is super important. These little things here, the ones that are pretty important is this one, this magnet, and this one, this linked selection. This magnet allows you to do things like this. You see how it just kind of snaps into place here? That's what that does. If I take that off, then you'll see it just slides around, and I just have to kind of get perfect to place it if I want it to be aligned with a certain cut. So this is a good thing to keep on depending on what you're trying to do. And if it is getting annoying because you're trying to do something a little bit more creative, you don't want it to kind of be at the same cutting point, then you'll turn it off. This one is off, link selection, which should possibly be on for what we're doing right now, because with it off, each thing is its own. When you select it, it's not linked to anything. However, this is all linked together. So now with it on, it'll select the whole thing. So now if I want to make a cut with Command K, it cuts the whole thing. Or if I want to make a cut with the razor, it cuts the whole thing. So these are some of the tools that you may want to keep on depending on what you're trying to do. Okay, so right now I'm going to undo link selection. I'm just going to delete these bottom 2 rows of audio, turn it back on. So I have this here. The reason I did that is because I want space to add a little music, right? So let's go ahead and add music to our little pretty movie here. And now I know this movie is doesn't make any sense, but it's a pretty movie nonetheless. Let me go ahead and grab some music really quickly. Hold on 1 second. We're back. We have our music bed here, and what we're gonna do is move this a little over, let the music start, and then we'll do our little fade in. We'll go ahead and Command K or Control K this clip. We'll fade this out. We'll also fade this in. Now this is very basic. I would do a little bit different things here, but I want to get you guys started off on the right track. So we could just fade the music in. We'll fade in the video, fade in your B-roll, fade out your B-roll, fade your video out, fade your music out, right? So this is very, very basic edit thus far. Now, we're gonna bring this in to a close, right? So now we have our video pretty much done. We have some B-roll, we have some regular clip. It should have audio there, but I forgot, sorry. And then we have our music underneath, right? So after we have all of these things, what we could do is we'll do a little bit of coloring because this clip is completely flat. So we'll come over here, we'll select on the clip, right? And now we can actually start coloring the clip. Now, when I come to my color window, and I go to basic color and correction, there's a couple of things you can do. I don't have a white point on here. Actually, this thing is white right here that I could use. This is probably not the best use of it. But what I can do is this eyedropper tool will set my white balance to this little piece of paper that I can see here. And it did kind of work. It balanced my whites a little bit. Also, you can see it's kind of desaturated. So what I can do is just go ahead and bring up my saturation here because it was a completely flat image. We'll do this at 175, that's fine. And we will adjust our contrast a little bit just to do something quick. Let's bring down our highlights a little bit. Bring down our shadows would be nice. Bring up our whites and crush our blacks just a bit. Okay, that feels way better than what we had before. If you want to see what it looks like before, you click on this check mark and it'll take away what you did. Yeah, two completely different images, right? So now that we have some life to it, we'll go ahead, and this was shot in a similar lighting conditions, so I'm gonna cheat. I have everything that I was done here. I'm gonna come from the coloring window and come back to the editing. And if I click on the clip, which is already highlighted, and go to effect controls, you'll see the coloring effect has been applied here. Lumetri color. So what I can do is click on that and do Control C, and now that has been copied. And I can come here to my B-roll clip and click Control V, and it will apply that same coloring that I just did to this clip. So now both clips have been colored, right? And now, so we did some coloring, we did a couple of transition effects, and now we're done. We can just export this bad boy. So let's go ahead and finish up everything we've done. Now, the same way that we did when we selected our clip early on in the source window, and we clicked I to start our starting point, and we clicked O to start our ending point, we can do the same thing here. Now, the reason that'll be something that we'll do here, we know we have nothing else left to render. So Premiere knows that too. And if you see this yellow bar here or whatnot, it knows there's no video outside of this, and it knows there's no audio outside, so it just ends here. So Premiere itself would end at the end of what I have. So I could just render that out. But if I was doing some editing and I had some like excess stuff that I moved over to the side that I'm not using currently, what I can do is just click our same IO. So we'll have our O point here. We don't really need an I because we're going to start at the beginning. And now I'm going to tell Premiere to only render up to my O point. Now, how do we start rendering? We can come up here to export, and it's going to bring us to a whole new window. Now in here, like I mentioned before, our sequence name has already populated itself here. And we're still in our current project locations where it's going to put our file here. Now, here's some different rendering presets. I would say keep everything easy for yourself. Click on these presets and you should be able to find a preset similar to what you're trying to do. We're doing a high quality 1080p HD video. Now, if we do more presets, you can pretty much search for just about anything that you would need. And if it's not in there, like let's say you want to do something for Instagram, let's see if it has Instagram. It doesn't. I will make a follow-up video on just exporting so I can tell you how to set up some exports for things like if you want to do a square video or a vertical video, then I'll set up some presets for you. As for now, what we're going to do is stick to what we already have. We're going to go here. We know we want to do a high quality 1080p video. That's going to be good enough for you. The only other thing you want to know is your range. So now this is important because like I mentioned before, if you do your entire source or your work area or your custom, anything like that, you want to make sure you know what you're rendering out. So this is going to be from my source in to out. So it's letting me know this is what I'm going to render. And then you have two ways you can do it. If you have media encoder on your computer, great. I would use media encoder because if you want to keep working on your project, let's say you want to export something so that you can take a look at how it looks and feels, but you're not done editing and you want to keep working, you would use Media Encoder, so it opens a different program to render while you can still work. However, if you export in Premiere, you can't work on it. Premiere is going to take up the resources, so you won't be able to use Premiere at all while you're rendering. Okay, so because we talked about Media Encoder, I'll go ahead and send to Media Encoder. All right, so Media Encoder opens up right here, and all you have to do is click on this green arrow, and it's going to render through our beautiful work, and boom, we're done. After that, you have finished your first video. So now you can just click right here and it'll take you straight to your first video and you can watch your first video. Congratulations, you did it. You made it through, you survived, Premiere didn't crash, and I completely forgot to talk about the most important thing, which is Control S. In Premiere, you wanna have a habit of hitting Control S. So after any edits that you've done, make sure you have a habit of hitting Control S. The only other thing I would suggest is to make sure you also set up the auto save function to save pretty regularly. It's annoying because you could be in a flow and you're working, you're editing, and it pauses so it can auto save, but trust, it's great when you have auto save and it crashes, and luckily it's saved like 2 minutes ago, so you only lose 2 minutes of work opposed to 2 hours. Trust me. But again, congratulations, you did it. You're now a Premiere Pro. You're still a novice, but you're gonna be a professional soon enough. I'm gonna make sure to pump you out as much of this type of content as possible. So if you like the video, please like the video. And if you learned something, please tell me what you learned down in the comment section below. Also, if you have anything specific that you would like to learn, go ahead and leave that down there too. Yeah, so I gave you guys some tools to create. That'd be great. Peace.